It's Wednesday, April 23rd, 6:02 p.m., and this is the Technology Commission meeting. Call to order. Will you call the roll?
Scott Mead is not here. Greg Stroig.
Present.
Alderman Pecorelli is excused. John Farney has left the commission. Laura Galusha is excused. James Rayberger.
Present.
Rajiv Sarana is not here. Andrew Pelkey.
Present.
Max McWilliams.
Present.
Jaspreet Kaur is off the commission, and so is Dale Webber.
Plus 3 now.
No. All right. Okay.
It just happened this week. It just happened this week.
All right. Pledge of allegiance, everyone. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. No citizens are in the audience, so we'll do that, and we'll review the minutes from last time.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And now we have the Microsoft 365 full domain migration project.
A lot of work.
It's only 1 or 2 slides.
It was a lot of reading.
Yes, between writing the RFPs, talking to all the vendors about them, and then getting the proposals, the stack. This was due on Friday, then going through Easter holiday weekend, reading them all, then creating the presentation material. It was a lot of work, so hopefully I didn't buzz too much in the entire process of it. When we get to some of the stuff, depending if you read the RFPs or not, I mean, I have a section here where I restate the business goals and I restate the deliverables. If you already read it, we don't have to go through that material. So my goal is to kind of like move forward through this as much as possible. There's 2 main decisions that we'll have to make tonight. One is love it or list it. We kind of said, yes, we're going to list it when we decided to do full migration from the last meeting, but yet I'm getting a lot of input from the vendors through my conversations and writing the RFPs on this, and they kind of like, are you really, really, really sure you really want to go down that route? We strongly recommend that you reevaluate. So I will pose that up again for reevaluation with their input of what I gleaned from it. But I also realize that this is an opportune moment where these opportunities don't come very often as well. So love it or list it will be our first choice. I've been using that metaphor a lot because it kind of fits. And the other is, out of the 3 projects, who are we going to turn around and decide to give the contract? And one's kind of clear, no. But then you have 3, and then based upon kind of the decision of the domain, kind of puts the direction on who you want to turn around and actually go with. For it, I can have some recommendations on it, but my goal is not to make the same mistakes that we did first time around on it. The first process of that is vetting this before we turn around and just award it to a vendor, because they always look good on the surface when you get the proposals and talking to them, but when it really comes down to it, are you hiring the right person? And I don't want to go down through that failure again. Realizing, yes, we have Microsoft Fast Track, part of them, although that only is for the Microsoft 365 and Exchange project, not for the domain stuff for it. And there's only 3 people, and this is a lot of work, and we are going to need additional boots on the ground for it. There's no question. There's just not enough people right now to deal with the analysis and building all this stuff and converting it and then working with all the end users. It's going to be a big issue. So as we go here, as I said, this time we're doing a formal RFP process as we identified in March and February, the postmortem. One of the main reasons why the Office Migration Project failed was the insufficient vetting of the vendor. Due to the complexity of the overall project, I actually broke it down into 3 different RFPs, and I included that on the Box.com server. The reason for the 3 is to, one, to be a lot better composition of the project tasks, made budgeting and scheduling a lot clearer. They don't have to be done serially on it, but if you kind of approach it, it just makes it, from an understanding and bidding standpoint, a little bit easier. If necessary, we can turn around and put different vendors for different projects. We don't have to give the whole thing to one vendor. And then scheduling some of the project tasks, like I said, can be done concurrently. We do have Microsoft Fast Track available for both us and the consultant, also to turn around and address any complexities that we might actually run into, but it is only for the Office 365 projects and Exchange only. There are several budget concerns. The 2025 contingency funds for the city, there's not much left in that account right now. And I know first thing, the beginning of the year, we had to take $81,000 out of that because the police department did not turn around and budget for Rapid7 in their budget. That goes back to a Peggy Steno thing, but that immediately had to come out of the contingency funds. The Office 2025 OpEx request, we didn't have one for Office 365 and the YubiKeys, where this basically would be renewing the licenses every November. Unfortunately, they did not put the money in, saying, hey, we've got this encumbered funds that we're starting, because we started on the project in late instead of turning around and doing it earlier than we originally intended for it. So instead of putting in $106,000 for a next annual update for November, they didn't put in anything for it. I guess now instead of renewing this November of 2025, we're going to renew it now in January of 2026. So we're on a month-to-month licensing for it that we continue. Hopefully we don't have to sign a contract, or otherwise we're going to have some fun here. But they didn't put any money in for that, and that means the money that I was planning for 12 months now has to be 14 months because I have to include November and December into the money. So that's another $16,000 that was unaccounted for in the budgeting process. That magically has to come out of that money that was going to be using for consulting in the original 2024 budget for it. The purchase orders, this is more for the alderman that's tied to there. I asked Danielle what to do about it, because the purchase order right now is assigned, the entire money for the 2024 budget is assigned to Eide Bailey, which means when I'm drawing from that purchase order, I can only do it for invoices coming from Eide Bailey. Well, the only thing I get from Eide Bailey is my monthly licensing bill, which means I cannot use that money to buy the YubiKeys, and that's where it's stuck right now. And there's about $19,000 in consulting fees that we haven't used, and that's stuck in the PO. So it's like, what do I do about this? And Danielle's going to have to give me some form of a solution. Do I close the PO and reopen it off of an invoice that doesn't exist? Do we break the rules on this? What do you do when the money is stuck in a PO, but you still have the vendor that's active?
Is that money, though, for services that hasn't been rendered by that company because we got rid of them because they
Correct.
messed it up?
Correct.
So but the money is really for the services, not. I know the PO ties the services and the vendor together, but the council approved $19,000 for these services.
Yeah, but I'm running into finance rules now. I'm running into accounting rules where the accounting rules in the finance department says I can only charge Eide Bailey invoices to that purchase order.
Right, but can't we just make a simple? Can't we just go for a simple line item for the council that says, "Hey, we know we fired Eide Bailey because you approved this purchase, didn't get it for this vendor. Now we're going to."
And that's maybe what she's going to have to do.
Purchase order portion is canceled.
Yeah.
The council has total
process
control
by
over the
exception.
purse.
Someone in
That's where I
finance
wanted
should be
the
able to
person
figure
who
that.
sits on the finance committee here today.
Yeah, well,
That's their puzzle to figure out, but that should be figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
It's either
But
that
yet
or-
I've run into other bureaucracy issues in the past. So I know my money for all the YubiKeys is sitting in that PO. How do I get it out of that PO?
council action item.
Well, like you said, as a last recourse, you kill the PO.
Right. And then you just create a new one, but you would be creating a new one based upon your monthly invoices, and maybe that'll have to suffice. how do you please the auditor is what it comes
Yeah,
down
yeah.
Oh, that's a finance.
to. And we're in the middle of an audit. And in order to do this, the money, well, if I can't get it out of the contingency fund and I can't take it out of, because we're using it for the licensing, the OPEX for 2024, where's the money going to come from? The answer is I got CapEx money for core switches, and I'm going to have to forego my core switches for this year, punt it down the next year, either in 2026 or 2027. Don't like doing it. I'm going to have to use that money for core switches to pay for this project.
Well, that I would think would be an internal finance hurdle of changing CapEx to OpEx.
That is going to be a request to the Common Council next year. That's a budget amendment where then they have to then turn around and approve a budget amendment to reuse that money for different purposes. The fortunate thing is I did get permission from the chief of police to use half of that money, which is sitting over the police department's account, for this particular project. So the police chief is on board with it. So out of the finances, the core switch project per site is $81,267, which means we have $162,534,000 just for the core switches that I can apply to this. So when you look at the total amounts, and I broke it out between City Hall and Police, so you just double the money. So for the Active Directory, I have $30,000 for consulting services. Estimated about $34,000 for Windows 2024 licenses. That came from a quote from CDW. $8,000 for Windows 2020 server. $4,000 for the water department. We have to upgrade them too, and then $20,000 in SQL licenses for it. So licenses alone for that is between $55,000 and $60,000. Then with the MFA, we're at about $14,000 for just for consulting. Then we got the stuff stuck in the PO. So it's $24,000. It's about $80 for a YubiKey 300 units, and then consulting, additional consulting money if we need it, because I planned about $26,000. That's the $19,000 that's left in the original PO, and then the exchange $26,000 in consulting. And migration tools, we had an estimate of $3,000. These were numbers that were just picked out of the clear blue sky. Because I had to put something down for the RFP. So I kind of guessed how much the time was, and obviously we varied around, but there were some people that actually stuck to those numbers for realizing this is what I have, and based upon what I have off of it is $68,000 per site for it. So I'm estimating, when all said and done, there's about $25,000 in contingency, unused funds above and beyond what I allocated, because I'm not going to turn around and tell them in the RFP, this is my maximum amount, because they'll always go over the maximum and then I'd be in trouble. So I always tell them I have less money than I actually have. Estimated costs, based on 30-day sprints on it, that we're looking at just for consulting alone, $89,000. Then we look at the additional cost, which would be $87,000. That includes the licensing, and it also includes the $24,000 in YubiKey. So it's about half and half of what we have for that particular money. When I look at our software money, last year, our budget for iBailey was $158,000. That was $129,000 that was in capital, and $28,000 that was in OpEx. And then breaking down, all right, this is everything that we have turned around and spent with iBailey thus far on it, estimating our additional licenses on a per month basis going all the way to December to account for them not putting the money in the budget this year. So I estimate that I will have $43,097 left over that is not going to turn around and go to iBailey. Which means, all right, $73,000 is what we'd be spending with iBailey. $43,097 is what I estimate in savings that's still in that PO. If I take $24,000 minus the YubiKeys, that means there's an additional $19,000 that I can add into the pool on top of the 162 that we have right now. That's a lot of numbers that I just went flying past there. But hopefully everyone's following that. All right, love it to list it. I'm sure we all seen the show, right? It actually is a pretty darn good metaphor of what we're going to turn around and do with the domain. That, do we want to stay in the house that we're currently in, because we love our house so much, and we're just going to add a new UPN to it, and then we're going to turn around and make changes to the live system, the live applications while the users are there, and we just make all of our changes to the system as it stands today. There's some advantages to that. It's been stated by the consultants who turned around and was playing devil's advocate with me. One, it saves big money by not purchasing additional Microsoft licenses. That we just have to we just use what we have right now. We aren't upgrading to anything. So we stay on Windows Server 2022 with the Active Directory domain controllers. We stay on SQL Server 2019. We also know there's not going to be any problem with SID history because we're adding a new UPN. Their SID doesn't change. We know there's not going to be any issues with 80 integrated applications. I just got it confirmed with BSNA. It's not going to be a big issue. Even if we move to a different domain, it just queries the Active Directory domain controllers and anything it does for logging of the transactions. So it knows that James Matelsky posted this transaction on this day. That's all just written out to a log file in its entirety. So it's not writing that as a table for it. So it doesn't make a difference if you turn around and change the SID or not. The worst thing I would have to do is I would have to add new users into BSNA for the new domain, or change the users that are existing there that we're going to be changing along the line with BSNA, and then just give them the appropriate rights within the application. So that BSNA is our biggest worry. Another pro is it's faster in getting onboarded and moving over to project number 2. Con, big one, is you have to do a ballet, making changes to a production working environment while everyone's turning around and using their existing login IDs. So that's going to be a big communication problem. I'm making a change on this day to a select number of users, and select number of users, pay attention, I'm talking to you. This is what you are going to have to do on that particular day because things are now going to change when you try to get access. You're also not starting over with a completely blank slate, so you may still have any hidden HBS configuration problems that is in the Active Directory, and you still are using the non-routable domain name cifranklinwi.us, and it's also going to be using that for DNS, and it's also going to be using that for the internal certificate server for it. So it's that you're still going to have some legacy cifranklinwis out there, but you can coexist with it. Listed, building a brand new house. Going through the hell of building a brand new house, then you have the hell of moving all your stuff and moving into the brand new house because moves are never fun.
Really expensive.
Yeah. So, just like licensing, it creates an independent domain, big pro. So what you're doing is you can hopefully turn around and move people over in batches a lot easier, which will ease the rollouts because it is an independent domain. If there's something wrong, just go back and use the existing one. You're starting with a brand new domain with the latest OS and SQL, and you're going to be building on the best security practices in the new domain. You're also creating a fully routable domain name for long-term strategic impact, as we discussed last meeting. Cons, you may have issues with 80 integrated apps. I'm going to go through the list of them. It is a much more slower rollout and more costly, because it's a lot more work. You have the cost of licensing, which we saw was significant. There is a possibility some legacy apps not being compatible. My estimation of that is pretty low. And there's also a lot more complexity in moving the Exchange mailboxes to a different domain, because now the account that it's being linked in, you have the mailbox in your old domain, but you have the account in the new domain. When you move them up to Exchange Online, you're going to have to use a third-party conversion tool to turn around and link the two back together again. That's been told to me. Project timeline. We do have other projects that are constantly being thrown at us that are beyond our control. One of them is the Motorola PD body camera, which they wanted to start working on June 3rd. And I said, that ain't going to happen, folks. This is an application that is going to be completely and totally Entra ID integrated. So this will only work with Entra. So we're rolling out brand new body cameras for all of the police department, and all the squad cameras are getting replaced with the 500 series squad camera that has to turn around and upload its stuff to the Motorola cloud and authenticate using Entra ID, which means this project is now coupled to what we are doing with onboarding and the domain migration. And if those two projects get pushed behind, this project gets pushed behind. Now, there are a few ways around it, like the brand new squad cars that they're ordering with the new one. You can create an Entra ID only ID temporarily, and then once you turn around and move your Active Directory domain and synced it, then you can give it its permanent ID and just move it over to the new account. But I've also seen it in their project plan. Oh, we're going to be here this date, and we're going to set up all the body cameras and test it, and everything's going to be working for the body cameras. It's like, no, they aren't, because Entra's not going to even be built yet on that particular date. So there's a challenge there. There's always a challenge of turning around and doing 3 linked projects together all at the same time. Can the tasks be done concurrently? Do you have to use a waterfall cascade model or maybe agile? Treating this as an agile project and doing things in sprints will make it a little bit easier to do instead. I'll leave that up to the project managers.
Do they understand Agile?
One would hope. Not all. It's a good question. Not all project managers do.
What happens if...
I know it's normally used in development, not in operations, but I have seen it used in operations. That's actually how we onboarded with BSNA.
It's actually very.
Well, what happens to the 500, the squad car camera series body camera update? What from a cost standpoint, what's it going to cost to delay it? Because if they've already ordered it and had money, then is what the stuff's going to sit? It's going to show up. We're going to pay for it. It's going to sit there for 6
Well, it's under a
months?
grant, so we aren't paying for it. The federal government is actually paying for it. Okay. Fortunately, under a grant, so it will be paid for at this point. They just can't use it until we turn around and give them either an alternative solution or this moves forward. So they can't have the body cameras, which isn't the end of the world because they aren't using them right now.
They could use it if they had a temporary Entra ID, but it's only
Yeah, but
for
I'm not going to give
squad
an
cars.
Entra ID to every single field officer.
Okay.
Not a temporary one.
Yeah.
That's 75 to 85 people. I'm not giving 75 to 85 people a temp ID.
Okay.
But we will have 3 to 4 new squad cars coming in. One of them is already having the seats and the dash and all that torn out, and they're now setting it up as a squad car for it. So that's right now at the vendor, and they're getting it close to being done, and they're going to want their new squad car because they want the new squad car, then they retire the old one. Maybe an instance where you got to use the old squad car until we're done, and then you can use your new squad car. They aren't going to be happy about that, but there's really no reason why they couldn't. And also, when we look at our hard deadlines, there's really no, beyond the licenses we're paying for on a monthly basis with $8,000, we're not getting any value from it. Beyond the PD, there's really nothing else that's saying, all right, if you had to take to October to do this, it's October to do it. We're just not getting any value off of our Office 365 stuff. And then there's also another project, which is more loosely coupled, that they have to replace the VMware server for the water department. And then they're going to redo all of their SCADA VMs, and they're going to rebuild those all as Windows 11 or Windows Server 2024 or 2022 servers. Might be 2025 place. And then contracts for legal and review. That we can't spend Jesse's 8 to 10 weeks on this. He has 2 weeks to put this together, and that is it. But it may get more complicated if I use more vendors. Business goals. We can go through this if you want me to read the slides, or you can read it from the RFPs. What do you want? Read it, or
We don't need to.
We don't need to read
don't read it? Okay.
We skimmed it.
Vendor deliverables. Read it. Skip it. Again, it's all on the RFPs.
Yeah, let's go to the RFPs. I would say.
Okay. Now we're ripping right through the slides.
A lot of them you put together.
Yes. application analysis.
Well, do you
Slide
want
I'm
to
on.
start with the overarching commentary that they had in terms of, are you really sure you want to do this?
Yeah, I would be interested.
The overall commentary on it is unless you are going through a legal contract or you're merging organizations for it, unless you have some form of a bankruptcy and you have to divest it and then move it maybe into a smaller holding company for it. So in other words, unless you're doing a restructuring of your actual business, why are you actually turning around and changing domain names? That's when most of the people do mergers and acquisitions or divestiture on it is where you normally turn around and see when a domain has to turn around and integrate or move to somebody else. Fairly rare that a company turns around and decides, let's just do a domain migration just because we're tired of the old one and we want a new domain for it. It's like it's a domain, it's not a car. That you keep it just like your house for a fairly long period of time for it. And yes, it can be done, but it's not very common to do it. And you have to be very careful of your applications. Make sure that all of your applications are compatible to make sure that you don't have any legacy application hanging out there that you can't deconvert. Because then what winds up happening is you have your new domain and your old domain that just hangs out there year after year after year and never really goes away. Anyone who's worked in the banking world knows that circumstance out there. And you suddenly think you can turn around and get rid of all these old applications only to find out you can't for it. So it's like, there's that panic of, all right, if we do this, are you absolutely 100% sure that you don't have any old app that's hanging out there in the old domain that's going to prevent you from actually decommissioning it when we're done? Because if you aren't ready to decommission that old domain, why are you moving from it? If you suddenly move to a new domain and you strengthen Kerberos authentication and you strengthen SMB, is that going to be compatible with your old legacy applications that depend upon it? You may think right now, without doing a full application analysis, that everything should work without any problems, but are you really, really, really sure that that's the case? There's that risk that you get into the middle of it, and guess what? You have an old app that's operationally needed that you can't get rid of, and then what are you going to be on hanging
almost
onto
a
the old
certainty.
domain? Those are the main reasons why they recommended don't do it. You may also have problems with SID history. You can do a conversion tool that can keep the SID history on the account, but if you go and just move it in with all brand new accounts and say screw the SID history, you may have problems with your Active Directory integrated domains that may be reliant on that actual SID history for it.
What did they say about the whole DNS and did anyone talk about that? Because I'm sure you explained that problem that we had. What did they say about that?
The only thing that they were worried about is if you go to franklinwi.gov on it, if you have anything externally for it, that you need to, is it going to follow the internal DNS resolutions when it's doing devolution of the domain name for it? How does it know to find it in the internal domain versus the external domain? Now, we kind of run into that to begin with ci.franklinwi.gov. For example, I have our Exchange server for OWA published externally as an IP address. So when you query it outside, it gives you the external IP address of that server. Well, I still want to turn around and be able to have it accessible when I'm in the internal domain. For example, if I have my phone and I have Outlook Mobile on my phone and I'm connected to the internal wireless network, I'm going to want to be able to read my email from my phone while I'm inside the internal area of the domain. Well, what I did is I just created a stub zone for franklinwi.gov inside there and gave it the internal IP address of that machine. They said that, all right, sometimes you have to turn around and build an IIS server. This came from DigiCorp, and I don't agree with it. And you just basically turn around and build that website on the internal web server, and then you just turn around and do a redirection command within the website. So the default web page is nothing more than a redirection using the external IP address. I'm thinking that you shouldn't have to do that. You can. franklinwi.gov, if I wanted to give my internal Exchange server or my GIS server, an internal domain. I just put it in my zone file, and I just have to guarantee when it's doing DNS devolution that it turns around and reads your internal domain name before it reads your external domain name. That it knows that franklinwi.gov is these internal domain name servers, and then if it's not in the zone file, then it goes out to the internet to turn around and do the rest of the devolution. That's my understanding of it, and that's going to be a topic of conversation when we turn around and start talking about the architecture. Another interesting one, which is an open-ended question right now, is do I have to build, I think I do, but I'm not sure, do I have to build an internal CA? Could I buy a DigiCert wildcard certificate for franklinwi.gov and use it both internally and externally? That's an open question right now. If I can use a DigiCert certificate, yes, I'm going to have to pay attention where I put it, because every year I'm going to have to renew it, and I'm going to have to update that certificate, so I'm going to have to be very, very, very careful that I track where I am putting that certificate for it. But can I put that certificate out there? Or do I need to have an internal certificate CA server for it? We still may have to do the internal CA if we are turning around and issuing certificates, but that does come into, can you have an internal certificate CA turning around and using a domain name that normally would be applicable to an external certificate server?
So with their commentary on of it are listed, they proposed on listing it, right? They proposed on moving
The
on.
RFPs were written with the premise that we are listing.
Yes.
The one company to turn around and said, we're not touching this with a 10-foot pole, and that was Cornerstone. The Cornerstone had another consulting company and says, we are not comfortable with your approach, we're not bidding off of it. It's like, okay, you're perfectly fine, and we think it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more money than you have allocated for doing a full domain. Great. So we do not feel as a company comfortable turning around and submitting the RFP. DigiCorp, when they submitted their RFP, actually for the domain migration gave us two choices, menu A and menu B, where they gave us the pricing for both loving it and listing it. Saying you can do either one. We'll support you with either one, but the prices are different depending on what you're doing.
You said that was DigiCorp?
That was DigiCorp then.
What was the delta?
You're upside down.
Is that the 27,000?
Yep, they had menu option A, 24,000, and then the professional services for optional tasks was 12,000 for it. So they said it was between 24,000 and 36,000 for option A, depending if you wanted the additional items for it. And then that was Love It, and then List It, they had it between 31,000 and 48,000.
Okay.
So you're at the high end, if you did it, you're looking at a $12,000 difference.
So,
Then they're consulting.
but when the last time we talked about this, you had a project, do this 65 tenant thing and the extra security and the YubiKey, and there was a recommendation, there was a snafu. There was like, you don't want to do this because you're doing something that Microsoft said was problematic. Don't go there. You're going to run into problems.
That was if we continue to use our internal domain. Now, if we love it, we basically add a secondary prefix to our basically our UPN, user principal name, for it. So you actually have two user principal names on it. And you make that one active, and then you change that for all the accounts.
Okay, so
And then account for anything that might be Active Directory integrated, like Microsoft Exchange.
So when we talked about it last, what I was voting for was let's not take a risk and do a Band-Aid approach that we know is problematic. Let's just do it the right way that puts us on the normal, well-traveled road so that we don't have a continual snowball of, ooh, we didn't think, oh, what about that? Oh, you know what I mean? Because you have a lot of operating departments with a lot of systems, and something's going to go wrong. There's too much of it, right? And so, so if we don't do the full migration, how are we not back to we're doing something that Microsoft says is no?
Well, this sounds like it's a third alternative.
Okay,
So we were talking about a couple.
okay.
No, it's what we talked about last week. There, if you remember the slide that showed basically, you could keep the unroutable domain name, which was unsupported. That was
Yes.
only used for testing and work environments. You could add the secondary prefix, which they turn around and support. Another option that they turn around was using ADFS, which is said is going away and is being retired. So there's non-routable ADFS, which is going to be deprecated. Then you're basically left with option C and option D. Option C is add the secondary domain prefix
Okay.
to it, which a lot of people still do, and it is supported.
Okay.
And add it to your domain and pray that nothing Active Directory integrated breaks with you going ahead and doing it.
Right.
Doesn't look like BSNA is going to be that much of a problem with it. I can't hold my breath on what Exchange 2010 is going to do. Or you turn around and do the full routable domain migration, which is the cleanest as far, because you're no longer holding an unroutable domain name and a routable. You're just using a routable, which is fully supported by Microsoft.
But then you pray none of your old applications are.
And then you pray that your old applications don't have any problems.
But there
with
could be, but
moving
option
up.
C also has risks in
Yeah.
old applications. Not
That's
only-
the risk in
Application
everything.
issues
Yeah,
exist.
so they risk on both sides.
Yes,
So
yeah,
it's-
Right, and so we recognize that in the long run, we want to have we want to be on option D, ideally, because that's the least problematic. It's the most straightforward, least problematic.
It may be the cleanest and the one that you would do if you had to start from scratch.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's really a true statement that you would.
Okay, but and so is the price difference between C and D $12,000?
For that vendor.
For that one vendor. And it's
I mean, here's the risk: you take option C, and then you go, well, that didn't work. Now you do option D.
Yeah, then
so
you have to pay for it.
So is it really just 12,000 more, or is it we just wasted a bunch of time and money doing option C, and then have to say, okay, that did, like the other first project, that didn't work out. Okay, now we have to go back to council and say, you know what, that first project, well, that didn't really work out. And then, the second project, well, that didn't work out really either. So we're going to go with option 3.
The other thing I'll just chime in and say, Microsoft engineers always have a habit of saying, "I'm just bare bones it, just rebuild it," like as a default option.
Right.
I cannot joke for you if I had $1 every time I heard someone say that, like a support engineer say, "Oh, you got to rebuild it." It's really?
Yeah, my
Okay, we can't do
Windows
that.
11 app is doing something weird. Just restart rebuild your machine.
I've had the help desk tell me to
clear
do
and
that
reload,
for issues
right?
with my Windows.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like
It is
I'm just
really-
letting you know that they do sometimes say that. But with that being said, it is, and you see enterprise organizations, they hobble along all the time. But a lot of these enterprise organizations have a lot more money to throw at these problems as they constantly pop up, and they have more manpower. So that's my concern, is that if there is something long term, how much time are you going to spend firefighting these things in the long term? Not you or
Are you talking about firefighting it with Lovett or talking
Oh,
firefighting
if
with
you
Listed?
loved it, how much time would you spend and resources would you throw at it in
Option
3
C.
years and in 5 years and
Yes.
then 20 years? Like that's what I'm concerned about when I
Option
think
C.
about it that way.
In my thought process and loved it and listed, I'm still, even though I heard all and was challenged by some very good opinions, I realize this is an extremely rare chance that I've been wanting to do this since I've been here on it, and there's always been a ton of reasons and excuses of why not do it, and we finally are at the point where we have the time, and I'm reallocating funding, so we finally have some funding here where we can actually go ahead and do it. I cannot guarantee 5 years, 3 years down the road, we're going to have the time, resources, and money to do a domain migration. I can't guarantee it.
Right.
I realize this is a rare event. The
So
Blue Moon.
It's $12,000 for one vendor. What about the other vendors? Give you a
Also-
option C and D?
It will 100% guarantee we'll never have any Entra problems again in the future.
Yeah, you can't say that.
You can't say it with the 2FA or with a dual UPN. So love it. You don't have 100% guarantee. It's a 95, but it's not 100. We're starting with a completely clean slate, which has a lot of advantages. You will also require some consulting time and planning. This has to be part of the revised SOW with the due to make sure that they plan for this. And it also places our SQL version on the latest versions as well. And we're kicking older versions of SQL. We're on 2019, but let's face it, it's now 2025, and even 2022 is 3 years old. I don't know if SQL 2025 is coming out anytime soon for it, but the SQL Server version that we're on right now is already 5 years old.
Yeah, but SQL doesn't really change that much.
No,
No.
but it does in security.
Well, if it's already 5 years, it's got 5 years. About that.
So those would be the main reasons why I would list it versus love it, realizing it's not as dramatic as, all right, we've just been bought up by another company. We have no choice.
Yeah, I'm not swayed much by the SQL argument, but the other arguments are very important.
I think Jim also said it best at the beginning of the meeting. We're only talking about 250, 300 with accounts here. We're not talking about a domain migration for 12,000 users. This is not going to be the largest group. There's not that many computer accounts. There's not that many user accounts in there. So it is a smaller type of a migration.
And it gives you an opportunity to reset, like you said, some of these opportunities with the desktop users where it's the local account versus the people account. And it gives you a really good cut clean story that you can sell to everyone else that way. The other thing I was thinking about with those unsupported the application that would break, because you're on a new domain and everything like that, we could set like some hard rule, like we can't set it, but we could maybe try to get some approval from the city council to like agree to, like, if anything does break going onto this, that means it's a horribly old legacy application and it needs to be modernized, and it's probably at security risk. Everything.
Right.
So they should be signing off on whatever is, like, we find it and it breaks, like, funds have to be allocated to help
Sucks
that.
to be you. We're turning it off.
Yeah, like something like that. Like, they just a warning to them and get them to buy into it, especially while the whole security conversation is going on and is relevant. They could probably be more willing to sign off on something like that, or at least be aware.
I don't think they'll understand it, but at the end of the day, it comes back to them because they are the control the purse. So it's going to be like, okay, we got 22 operating departments, all each running 3 pieces of software that are unique to them, and so of that pile of 50 products, right, something's going to not work. Something's going to be old. There's going to find something that somebody's working in the corner doing whatever.
It's the weakest, oldest piece of software that brings down the corporation and brings down
let's
your
look at
security
that.
structure. That's
It's the next slide. That from an enterprise, all right, we have Box.com, which is standalone. BSNA, our biggest beast, which is core operations. That's AD integrated. And I was just told by BSNA, if we just put in the new user accounts for the new domain and give them the rights, Tom Bakalowski is not going to like me having to recreate all these users in BSNA, but once you do that, they'll have their new user ID under the new credentials in BSNA, and it should work. We have Drive OCR, which is AD integrated, but that's only on NTFS permission, so I just add the NTFS permissions. Exchange, but that one's obviously going to the cloud and major changes. File print, I just add the new AD groups to the security NTFS permissions. Fortinet, well, I got a vendor, TPX, that does all the Fortinet stuff, and they just turn around and reset it up for a new domain. Yes, it's got a radius and certificate servers that we have to deal with, but that's part of the plan. GIS, that's standalone, and we might go over to the cloud with new licensing tied to that. The Razor Safe, found out that's 100% Exchange integrated, and that also will work with Exchange Online. So I don't need to buy or contract with anything else. I can use my current Introdyne for journaling, which goes back to 1998, and directly tie it to the cloud. I was very happy to hear that. And then KnowBe4 for security awareness training, that's also cloud integrated, but if I had to wipe it and restart it over from scratch, I have no problem with it. Then we have Lapide that used for auditing, and that's NTFS permissions, and I got a support contract on that. Microsoft Office. The only other one would be Milestone, which is used for video surveillance, and that's really used only for the people either extracting from it or doing editing. And I can have Heartland turn around and change the domains on that. That's not operationally sensitive. Mimecast, that's all standalone by the email address. Rapid7 is email is all uploaded to an event source. I just have to change the event source. Plus, I have Rapid7 support account that they can get the people involved to change that out. That's a day maximum. RingCentral's by email address. Spiceworks, that's on a Windows 2000. Yeah, that's our ticketing system. And we still do the standalone. It's supposed to be in the cloud. So either we move it to the cloud or get rid of it. Get rid of the ticketing system just in time for a domain migration. Isn't that a great idea? Veeam, which is partially AD integrated for its upload account and notification. VMware is partially integrated with what it does to turn around and integrate with AD and also logging into the vCenter into the VMware environment. VMware Workspace 1, that one is cloud integrated for it. I'll have to work with the vendor on changing that one. Now we're down to department applications. Laredo, that's county. Market Drive, that's standalone. Clerk's Office, WEC Portal, that's also standalone, run by the state. DPW, FleetWise, Old Access, I take that back, it's not Access, it's SQL Database, that's standalone. OPW Phoenix, also standalone. Engineering, AutoCAD, cloud delivered, standalone. Square 9 DMS, we just put that in there. We're waiting to turn around and import everything to do it, so I've got them on hold right now, and they're going to help us with, Konica Minolta is going to help us with the conversion. Finance, LandNav for all of our tax collection, that's county and that's standalone. Series 2000 Asset Management, that's standalone. Fire Department, Firehouse is standalone legacy, which will soon be virtualized. Health Department, Health Space, that's standalone. Software Expressions, that's cloud. Municipal Court Tips is cloud. There's local for payments, but that's it. Planning Department doesn't have anything. Police is probably our biggest one. So we have Boston Elper, that's shared by the state, but it runs over at Greenfield. Morpho Ident is standalone. NetMotion VPN, that is AD integrated, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem moving the accounts over. Portals 1000, that's run by the State Department of Justice, that's standalone. ProPhoenix and CAD, big ones over there, those are also standalone. Telus County Shared Services, that's a standalone, and that's a portal run by the county. Praxis is cloud. Arbitrator and WatchGuard, that's going to be completely replaced by that Motorola project, going to Entra ID. And then Wonderware SCADA, standalone, and that's going to be upgraded to a new server. That's it. There's nothing there that shows me it's going to seriously break, because a lot of it is standalone. And there's nothing there that's telling me beyond Exchange and maybe NetMotion that if I suddenly move it over to a new domain, suddenly we're going to have a lot of problems with the.
And that's a pretty. You're pretty confident that that's a complete inventory because you have control over what. Yeah, because you have control over what gets.
Yeah, I just went through extra sieges.
Yeah.
So if there were
And that
any,
wonderful audit of 79 questions.
so if there were any rogue applications out there, where would they be? Police department?
It would be a local desktop or someone subscribed to a cloud application that I don't know about. Cloud application should be fine. It have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Since a lot of stuff is
Some
going to the
weird
cloud, it makes it easier.
Well, if there, and hey, this would be another really good thing. If you do find one, it's not sanctioned by IT. So then you should consider that, hey, you're not using a non-sanctioned thing that I have to review. It has to be documented, and we have to do analysis to see if there's any security
Right.
risks. If this is something we should support, or if we're already paying for a product that you're using. So then we can save the city more money.
It'll be something weird, like
It-
somebody's got
oh,
a
no.
web dev
Someone's got an
integration.
application, I guarantee
and,
it.
you know, it's like what the hell's going on here? That won't be as straightforward.
Now, the nice thing
Those
is,
AD or not.
really
the
are-
director of IT who had to play desktop support engineer for an entire year on it and set up all the desktops and handle all the desktop questions. I've got a pretty good handle what the apps are on the city. And plus also comparing it to the software that we use to determine the apps that are out there for it. So
it sounds like you're saying there's a relatively low risk.
I think it's relatively low risk. It could happen,
Oh, I'm sure.
but I think it's relatively low.
So so it sounds like it's a low risk for option C or option D.
That is true, at least with the AD portion of it, yes.
So still says option D to me.
But if you do D or the full placement, you can do these user groups, sort of cut them over by one.
If you do a full domain, so if you do list it, then yes, you can do it. You build them out.
Because you have a new environment that's
Right.
all on the new.
So I can say, all right, today we're doing the fire department. Now the fire department, we move all your computer accounts, and we move your application server over there, and we set up your new IDs. Fire department, you're now into it.
And if it doesn't work, then they just operate under their old.
Right. And then we have to figure out what we're going to do with Exchange. Exchange kind of adds the
Well, sure.
complexity
Yeah.
to it. How can you get back to the old Exchange server under when you're signing in with your other ID on it? We'll have to figure something out with that until we move, or we don't move them into the new domain. We have all the stuff set with Entra. We have all of the stuff set to sync. We just don't bring them into the new domain until we're ready to do the Exchange. And then when we move them over, cut them over to the new domain, they're now getting 2FA, and we're now going with Exchange. And that's when we move them, cut the servers over to the new area.
And so if the fire department, for example, with all the time on their hands, are out there putting new apps on their machine, compatible, then we can just say you're not ready to move.
This is where I say the project gets a
Because
little
the
muddy.
exchange has to be.
Where
It's all
if
or
you
nothing.
think about it in serial, it's very easy to envision it. But when you start thinking about it, all right, now we're going to do the fire department. We'll do the domain migration. We'll do the Entra migration. And now we're turning around and moving you to Exchange. All right, fire department's done. Now we do another department. We may have to take it that type of an approach to do a domain migration.
Well, the enterprise apps, it's all or nothing, right? You're either we're running an enterprise app,
Correct.
Microsoft 365, or we're on the old stuff.
So the BSNA would be the biggest trick, but the BSNA, I think we can set it up where it runs in both domains. Beyond that, Milestone don't care.
Sounds like
Minecast, Rapid7,
BSNA would
Ring Central, SpiceWorks goes away. Veeam, VMware, all that's back-end stuff that the user doesn't touch. Same thing with Lapide.
I don't see any. I'm not hearing any compelling argument other than save $12,000 to not go with option, the full migration.
I think he's made a pretty clear-cut case for us.
Yeah.
And he feels confident about it, that he can do it.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes right there.
Well, and if we had a plan that said if something unexpected were to turn up with a certain department, and then somehow they could continue to function until that issue gets resolved, like everybody is over here except these people, it doesn't sound like that's quite doable because of the enterprise.
I will also admit I'm an egg breaker, too, from a personality. That when I first started here, you remember it, one of the first major things that we did is we replaced compute, network, and storage all at once. And people turn around, are you absolutely out of your mind? You're doing all three of them at once? The infrastructure sucks. It all has to be replaced. We have no choice. If we break eggs, we break eggs. You don't have to do a Tarantella on them.
I guess the thing that you spent a few minutes on talking about, the cameras and the cars, that's got me almost equally as worried as this approach, or which approach, because those are big assets and very visible projects that if we're not ready,
That's
it's
where
gonna
I'm
be
trying
some
to
screaming.
convince the vendor to give me a timeline instead of the beginning of June because it's convenient for you. I want end of June or July.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to push them out farther to give me enough time
Yeah.
to make sure that everything is set up. I told them I'm not going to get bullied just because it works best within your time frame to do this now. We have to turn around and launch that project when we realistically can do it.
And I know you said
that we're getting a grant. But are we getting a grant for the OpEx, like the Motorola Cloud for
Yes,
forever?
yes. It's either 3 years or 5 years.
Okay. So it's
They're
not a
paying for the
case
whole
of
annual storage. Yes.
okay.
Well, I think what the vendor's saying is that option C is lower risk, but option D is what we want. I don't see, right? I mean,
We can do
C is
either
low
one.
risk, low risk, lower cost, but option D is where we want to be.
You're trying to future-proof
Yep.
City of Franklin.
And I don't see $12,000 being a big cost, and I don't see that it sounds like the risk isn't really there. Well, that was only the point. It was
Now,
only
I
one
also
vendor.
realize the vendor doesn't have that application list. The vendor doesn't have spreadsheets of
Right.
users. The vendor doesn't have the spreadsheets of computers and the servers and groups. So I'm looking at this through far more informed glasses
Yes.
than they are.
Yeah, sure. Did
And
you
hence my angst is a lot less.
did you want to finish talking through this table or anything on here to talk about the different proposals, and then we can talk?
Yeah, we're about ready to go with the proposals
So
on it.
you said one of the decisions we have to make is love that are listed. So does anybody here feel compelled to go back off and go to option C versus go with option
List it.
B? I agree. I'm just not hearing anything that would make me say go back to C.
Is that a memory? We'll
Do we-
need a motion
Do
later
we need
on.
a motion?
We will when we're done.
Okay.
Oh, we'll do all the motions at once. All right, so out of the vendors, we actually looked at Cisco Duo with Noxa, but then it's like, I know Motorola won't work with Cisco Duo, so that kind of often really don't have a strong use case because we're not using that many cloud applications to go with the expense of going with the Universal Identity Manager for it. So they submitted a quote, but I didn't even include it. Cornerstone, they were working with a company, Eccentric. They were not happy with the amount of money, the timelines, or the approach of Listed. DigiCert gave us two recommendations. Was also recommended by Brian Sajek, who is one of the assistant city attorneys. He works with Jesse Wazalowski. He's also the city attorney for the city of Mequon. And when he saw all the stuff coming in with the Common Council sheets back in February about the failed project, he says, wait a minute, Mequon did this, and this is what Mequon did, and I know they did 2FA because I was the person that actually was the city attorney for Mequon, and I signed off on those contracts. So I actually did call the director over at Mequon and play 20 questions with them on DigiCert and how well they turned around and did. So we got, not DigiCert, DigiCorp. DigiCert's where our certificates come from. DigiCorp. Experian is a company that actually has a data center here in Franklin, which I'm actually looking at doing co-location with 2026. Or instead of building out a new SAN, maybe I take all the stuff and then move it all the way over to somebody else's data center and get free DR along with it. Stability for it. They referred me to SCS, and then Konica Minolta all covered. They never submitted a proposal. Paragram Development System, also known as Converge TP, they submitted it, and then Robert Half Technology. I did not ask, for obvious reasons, Heartland Business Systems to submit a proposal. Okay, a quick evaluation of each one of these, and you can look at the spreadsheet with the scoring if you have any questions. And this is just very, very, very high level. I gave them a 455 on it. Robert Half Technology is obviously a consulting company that does contract to hire positions. We actually hired Ryan Booz from them as a temporary employee, and then after a year and a half, we were able to turn around and bring him on board with only $1,000 fine, or $10,000. I take that back, $1,000 finder's fee at the end of it. They did take an unusual approach where instead of approaching this as a project, they approach it as a placement instead. Which makes apples to apples comparison really, really, really difficult on it. I do know they have a very deep level of talent that they have there and a good selection of people, turnaround and project managers to choose from. Some of them may be able to work locally versus remotely. And the consultants that they gave me were only examples that if we didn't like any of them, we could turn around and look at somebody else. Some of the problems with it is the complexity of interviewing all the people and the slowdown, find the right person and the right consultant for the job. Their hourly rates are on a government contract, so it is below the hourly rates we are getting from the other consulting companies. They gave me detailed deliverables in the proposal, but they gave me no time estimates, and they didn't give me any scope either. And then I would have to act as the project manager on this. That I don't have anyone heading up in that position, so I would have to be telling the consultants what to do each and every single moment of it. The major issues is due to time and scope not being included. Costs can only be estimates on how much we would utilize the resource. And this could come either above budget or below budget based on the utilization. Option number 2, score of 738. It should be noted that PDS has got a long-term history here, and they have done exceptionally good work for it. So I've been very, very, very pleased with it. They just recently did our VMware infrastructure for it. They were one of the ones we were looking at to do the core switches for it. They're also our main storage vendor for our system as well. They were acquired by Converge, and they now have a much larger bench of consultants to choose from. Their proposal out of all of them was obviously the most detailed if you turn around and looked at it. Their labor estimates were really on the high side, and that was the big downturn on it. They did approach it as an in-domain place upgrade, so we never asked them if we wanted to do love it. It might have lowered the estimates, but when you look at the total project cost, without any licenses, they wanted $162,000. With total project cost without no licenses was $162,000. That's how much we have available. Then we have 19 stuck into the contract. I think the project came in over budget at 166. So they're within $4,000 of just my contract budget at this point. They're the only one that did include conversion tools in their quote. We also have Abigail, who's an exceptional account manager for it. The major issues is the budget. That their domain migration was 50 to 60 over K. There were 12 K over on the 365 migration and 18 K over. These are just estimates. Could we follow in on that cost? They also spend a lot of money also in planning as well. They were one of the few that actually put a significant amount of money into the planning side of it. But their main lowering on the score was primarily, one, the contracts that they give us, there was no way to verify any of the people for it. Let's see, what do I have some notes here on it?
Is Converge TP Converge Technology Solutions?
Converge TP is PDS.
Yes, but they were purchased by Converge TP.
But they were a while ago, yes. So they're the most comprehensive plan, cost of listed tools, depth of talent, history of success, and they also had the strongest exchange engineer. Their estimates were high because they were under the assumption it was a full domain migration as well. Plus, they put a lot of money in for planning. Then number 3 is SCS. SCS was referred to us by Expedient. They are a security and analysis company that concentrates on penetration testing. They do post-mortem data forensics. They are white hat hackers at the most for it. They do a lot of onboarding with Office 65 work. They also do a lot of work for people that are vendors that have to work with the Department of Defense. So when we were doing post-mortem on it, they were giving me a lot of detailed information about the YubiKeys for it, and they've done a lot of onboarding with YubiKeys. They even had written some custom code specifically for YubiKeys. Their proposal, their costs and timelines were exactly on what I was recommending within the budget. Doesn't mean it's going to happen or not. We know they have the chops with the post-mortem to have the technical experience, and their confirms insights. They're also very strong on architecture and security design. Some of the issues that I may have with them is they're too security focused. I'm a little worried, just like iBailey, it is not a company that does deployment work.
Yeah.
It is a security company, just like iBailey was an accounting company. And none of their proposals included any information about really, they gave a sentence, and in that sentence they had, you've done work for blank, 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 and they gave you no contact information of how to be able to turn around and contact that particular person for it. And all the people that they referred to were not governmental. And the RP did suggest, yes, we need to have government contacts that proven that you've actually done the work for the government. I know they've done work for the DOD, but that was said over the phone. It's like iBailey said a lot of things over the phone, and it's not on paper with evidence for it. And some of their cost proposals are a little bit unclear. They said it was a fixed cost on it, but it wasn't exactly 100% clear that, yes, it's 100% truly a fixed cost versus a variable cost. DigiCorp, it is a Milwaukee area consulting company. It's supposed to be been acquired by Wind Technology. They're a well-known vendor in the area. We've had them submit past proposals for fiber optic and other projects. We haven't done anything with them. They were referred to us by the city of Mequon, where they did implement 2FA keys for them. They were the only vendor to support a dual proposal. The cost for M65 onboarding was about $15K over budget. But the other proposals were actually together under budget by $10K. So the total was only $5K really over budget. I did butt heads with their engineer, and he really pushed some buttons with me on I want to do a love it approach, and I really don't want to do a listed approach, but yet he did give me the dual approach to it. But I can say that me and the engineer that at least was working with on it, we didn't exactly hit it off at the beginning. But was it because he doesn't know his material, or was it just because he was challenging?
But if it goes south, he'll be the first one to point out.
Yeah, you didn't take our recommendation.
Exactly right.
Isn't that what iBailey wrote?
But you have to also make sure that the person that you're working with is going to turn around and listen to you because you're the customer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But I also realized he was challenging me, and people don't like it when they're challenged, and I have to look beyond that. They obviously they were also pushing a post-vulnerability scan using Qualys. I'm not the biggest fan of Qualys, and we all have our own penetration and vulnerability scanning solution, so that'll be off it. It is a mid-sized consulting company that does not have as deep of a bench as PDS and some of the other ones. And I'm assuming, because they didn't state it in their project under their resumes of the people that will be working on this, if they're local or not. I'm assuming they're local because they're in the Milwaukee area. That is a big plus, though, versus turning around who's doing all the work remotely for it.
What kind of project did they do for City of Mequon? Just 2FA?
They did do a full domain migration. They did a implementation and a domain cleanup using the secondary UPN. So they did option C, love it, and then they implemented UDP.
They did
have the
option
experience.
Yes, they do have the experience.
They did option C for Mequon, not option D.
They did option C for Mequon, not option D. Yes, they have done domain migrations though.
So do you have anything that summarizes the dollars here? I can add more. Across all the vendors for the segments of project.
I think you had one near the
It would be under cost, but I don't know if I did planning if it was above or beyond. It's under the exchange, so it's under this section. The blue.
Yeah,
It's under the costs.
wanted to see what they were.
You want to see ranking and
So-
cost.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the ranking is clear.
So I gave
Cost,
how
right.
much their labor was and their costs, and then I put in parentheses what the allocation was for it. I did not sum them up and then rank them based entirely on cost. I can tell you right now that Converge TP was well over budget, SCS was right on budget, and DigiCorp was 5K above it.
Okay. 5K. Okay. So over on plus 5K.
Sounds like we're taking betting odds right now.
Over under. And obviously the total score of 26 is
And what was
significantly lower. It's
PDS
90.
over by? Total over by?
Way over.
Way.
Way.
100,000, 9,000.
Unquantifiable.
It's unquantifiable.
For example, under planning, I mean, if we want to do some brief numbers, they had 80,000 if we wanted to do it fixed. Their allocation was 30, so they're 50 over there. They had 30 fixed when the budget was 33, and then they wanted Intune planning for it, so that's 12, so we're at 62 over, and then 7K for planning and labor so that's 47, and then I had 39 for it, so you're looking at about 80K over budget
Interesting.
over
they
what
call
I
it
was
Intune.
planning.
Did the other ones call it Intune? Did you talk to them about Intune?
About Intune?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Now they had it for planning with Intune. So they had planning of 15, planning with Intune, which was more of a workshop for Office 365, and then planning 7 for it. So out of the 80 on that, I mean, you're looking at 37,000 out of the 80 just in planning, where the other two didn't include any additional planning amounts for it. So hopefully, when I looked at their plan, when I looked at the actual schedule and decomposed tasks, the only one that actually had planning actually in the task sequence under their proposed Gantt chart was PDS. And planning's kind of important.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Are
That's what
anybody
we
else
say
doing
all
project
last
management in the work? I mean, these numbers are not very big to get a project manager in there.
So when I looked at it, under my thought process, if I was going to do Lovett, I would go with PDS, because they were the most comprehensive plan that included costs listed for the tools. They also had the planning portion of it. I know they have the depth of talent, they have a history of success, and they have the strongest exchange engineer on their resume. Their estimates were obviously high because they were assuming a full domain migration. So if I was going to do a Lovett, I would go with PDS. List it pretty much right. You got Robert Half out of there. There's no way, if you're buying the licenses, I can afford PDS. That brings it pretty much down to SCS and DigiCorp on it. And my suggestion was DigiCorp because it was a known company that can implement and deploy, where SCS is questionable if they're a deployment company. They say they are, but they don't give me any information on that. They are variable costs instead of fixed costs. They have potential local talent. They have the three references they gave were all government projects for it. They're known to do 2FA YubiKey deployment in Mequon. I do have a concern with a little hidden costs with their tools, butting heads with their engineer, and how much knowledge do they have on Exchange 2010. Say they have Exchange, but they never said Exchange 2010, although Microsoft can help us out with that, with it. So I realize it's really close between SCS and DigiCorp. Realizing the SCS has a lot more on the architecture and the security knowledge.
You verified with DigiCorp. You say, can you give me a reference to people that you did a full migration for? You gave me a reference for Mequon, but they did option 3.
Right.
Option C.
No
like a
one
reference.
actually gave me
Option D.
phone numbers to where I can turn around and call the places
Well,
and actually verify who they actually are. And
given
Well,
that-
if you're
I can look it up.
shortlisting people, if you just go
Yeah.
back to them when you're on the short list, I'd like to check references.
Well-
Give me names and numbers.
and
Do that for two
yeah.
vendors.
not only that,
Oh.
but DigiCorp, you talked to the guy, he strongly recommended option C, he steered you away from option D, so where does he get that experience from? Well, it had to have been a past project. So if you talk to somebody they did with option D, then the guy, you talk to the option D guy, he's going to be like, whoa, you don't want to do that because we ran into this, this, and this. And then you can say, all right, are we going to run into this, this, and this? You know what I mean? You can understand the thing that the guy's scared, trying to avoid. And then the last thing we want to happen is that first attempt goes bad. The second attempt goes bad. Why? Because we didn't talk to the prior customer that did the same thing that we're doing. We didn't do that. I mean, that's like, that's going to make us look really bad. So I would think that if we could consider DigiCorp if we can talk to some of the people that they did a full migration for, what we're asking them to do, and to say, okay, how did it go? And man, if it went badly, but there's something they learned they would do different the second time around, well, great, we can still go with them. But if it went badly and it's going to go badly again, well, then
I like that.
I mean, if you want to make a motion, say conditionally based upon, because it has to go to the Common Council after this. This is just a recommendation. Conditional recommendation based upon positive references from customers that have done a full domain migration.
yes, I put forth a motion that we recommend going
I will have to
with
use
DigiCorp.
for the record.
Yep.
We're going to have two motions, of one on love it or list it, and then another one on who do we want to give, and we don't have to give it to all three projects either. I could say, all right, SCS will do domain migration, and DigiCorp we're going to do with the Office 365 and Exchange migration. Makes things a little bit more challenging when you're putting more cooks in the kitchen, but you could do it. That's the reason why I parsed these out into three different proposals.
Do we get the right skills then on the right parts? Because the DigiCorp people are good at things which we can confirm they did in Mech1 correctly, and then the other people are better at the part that they didn't want to do. I mean, that would make sense to split it then. But it's up to you because you're the one who understands to the level that needs to.
What it basically comes down to is I know the information from the conversations on what they actually put in the RFP.
Yeah.
So if it's not in the RFP, I'm only going to guess, and that's why it makes more sense to spend a lot of time and energy, like PDS did, getting very granular on your RFP for it because that gives me the most information. I kind of wish I could go with PDS for the listed. Unfortunately, they just made it financially not achievable.
They're probably trying to see how hungry you really are to make it.
Well, the big difference between them and everybody else from a cost standpoint was the planning, right?
Right.
You take away the planning, you don't need to do
No,
planning.
they were still high on their variable.
They're still high in their parts. Okay.
But they are fixed fee, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So that takes away the risk from us.
Well, I should say they gave you an option.
Right.
You could do variable or fixed.
Right, but they're the only ones that did that. The only ones that gave you a fixed fee option.
An option, yes.
So if you go with that, which is again, I know it's higher. The risk is on them.
Well, not really, because
It is
when it's fixed, it's like
The problem
okay.
is I don't got the money for it. I don't have the money
I
to
know.
buy the licenses
Yeah.
and pay them all what they were
They
charging with
work up to
fixed
the
fees.
budget
I don't have
and
that.
stop.
I would need another. I have 160 plus 19, so I have 179. They're coming in at 22, so I would need about another $40,000 to $50,000.
Yeah.
To bring in PDS at what they were targeting.
It's a big increase, but is it worth the risk mitigation?
I also add to the fact that we also still have Fast Track.
So just a reminder, Fast Track is just an advisory.
Right.
It's an advisory service that they will work with you to do it. You, City
Have
of
to do the
Franklin,
work.
and any partner is still going to be doing the heavy lifting, but they will help review architecture, help review guidance, help with troubleshooting, all at no cost, available to any company. That's for all Office 365 services. So that's the O365 part. There'll at least be like a phone phone the friend.
Phone a friend.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
talk to the expert.
We're mixing way too many TV shows
Yeah.
tonight.
So,
So-
but that's the O365 part,
Right.
right? And the Exchange migration.
So we have not done. City of Franklin has not done business with Digicorp. And
Correct.
we have done business with SCS.
No.
Not at all. Well, that's also something, right? You
I mean,
know,
if he's
we're going with a flyer that we don't know, we don't have a relationship with, we don't know.
But if he's got the mech one guy in the same
He's
position.
got that.
on
He's got
Mech
that. That's worth
something.
something. That's
Yeah.
worth something. Yep.
And he felt positively about them too.
Well, except the engineer.
Oh no, the mech one person.
Oh, yeah.
had
Oh, yeah.
positive
Yeah.
things to say. Like
And
engineer
they do other
personality
things
aside.
than just this too. They have a portfolio of services that if we wanted to turn around and use them for other things in the future, we absolutely can.
And with that engineer who was doing the scoping with you, is he actually the engineer that'd be doing the work?
Yes, he'll be the one
Okay,
on
that's
the
the follow-up question.
And him not.
He needs an attitude adjustment.
His advice to say that I want to go with option C is a real red flag. I wonder whether he can do it, or I'm wondering whether he can, or whether.
I
He's done
mean,
it
he's
before.
either lazy, or that's all he's ever done, or he has run into some big
Yeah,
snafu.
And said, "Oh, I don't ever want to get burned that way again."
Yeah.
I think what you said, if you can go back and find out, like really just be like, okay, we've talked about this, we still really want to do this approach, but tell us why. Give us like the really good, like what was the horror story? What was the, why did this not work? Because we only see benefits of doing this. What are we not thinking about? And you can say like, we're like almost sold on this. It's, it's still, we want to do the full migration to solve all the problems long term. But, what could go wrong?
Well, I would, and just to repeat there, I would say that our need is for a full migration. That's what our need is. We don't want to be in option C. We want to be on full migration. But we heard you loud and clear that the guy you assigned to do this task doesn't recommend doing the full migration. So that's a cause for pause. And we want to make sure that if we go down this path, you're capable of doing it.
And you can be quite frank. We don't want it to come back and bite us, where you say, after you've spent our money, we told you so.
Well, you want to flip the coin and say maybe it's not DigiCorp, maybe it's SCS. SCS has
No.
not.
I don't like SCIS
I
for
got
the
a
same
problem
reason
with
you
that.
don't
I
like
got a
them.
problem with SCS.
They don't have a round enough portfolio of work.
To me, they're a
Security?
They're a
Great.
security company.
Hire them for security.
Well, let's say he
Okay.
let's say he talks to them, he goes down this path, he asks about the red flag, addresses the red flag, and he comes back and says, I'm not comfortable. This is a red flag for a reason, right? I'm not confident that this guy can do this thing successfully. It's not in his wheelhouse, he's uncomfortable with it, whatever, right?
Mhm.
Okay, now what?
And you
Find another person.
You gotta-
Maybe
find
they-
another company, you delay the project.
Well, I want to make sure
Somehow.
that he's going to
Break
like,
it up.
well, we got to wait another month for a IT meeting and then to talk about that possibility, right? I mean, we could just have an emergency meeting.
We can have
and
an
then-
emergency.
You can have
We
an
can have an
emergency
emergency meeting and we can get on it ASAP, right? So
Yeah.
if by Friday you're telling us it's not comfortable, then we come in on Friday.
Do we just have a person?
I mean, I have to have an answer before the 6th.
This is my point. We have to, if that doesn't work out, if that red flag turns out to be a real red flag, then we've got to. All right. So the last one, DigiCorp, we need to address the red flag.
Mhm.
Okay. If that doesn't work out, what's our second option?
Can you break this project apart? Just do the domain.
You can. I could give the domain to PDS, and I could turn around and give the onboarding Office 365 and Exchange over to them, or I could give the onboarding to DigiCorp, and I could give PDS. I can break it down and.
Could you break it across fiscal years?
No, we're gonna need to be onboarded well before the end of this year.
Do you have to award all the contracts at the same time?
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't, right? You need it all done.
I was going to say, yes, you need them all done, but they are sequential in some sense. So if you
Well, no,
sign
they're
on-
not necessarily sequential. They can be done concurrently. I wrote them up as they were sequential just to simplify things. There can be concurrent tasks.
So what's if DigiCorp doesn't work out? Is our primary is our choice? What's the plan? Give part to one, part to the other. I'm looking at you really nice.
Yep, and go
I'm really looking
somewhere
at
else.
Yeah.
Update our resumes.
I don't want to be giving parts around because then there's no ownership for the whole program.
And then you're gonna have pointing.
I feel a little bit more comfortable on the Office 365 and Exchange, even though because I do know I have consultants. They're supposed to be the boots on the ground. If I run into major technical issues with it, I still have Microsoft there in my back pocket. As you said, phone a friend, advisory, but I'm not. I got at least a safety net underneath me with that particular project for it.
So what would be
The domain migration, I could technically do it entirely by myself. I may be insane and not getting very much sleep at night if I turn around and did it.
We don't want
But
to.
I know enough about the environment. If push came to shove, I literally could do it myself.
That's not much.
I don't want you to do
be.
it.
So
I don't want to do it
You
either.
have way too much.
yeah.
I have way too much work,
That's for sure.
and
So-
I need to get to the health club before I die of a heart attack.
So is PDS's who's the most qualified person if DigiCorp doesn't work out? Who's the most qualified person to do the migration part, the full domain migration part?
The full domain migration part, the most competent person that I know can deploy and do it, even though we can't afford it, would be PDS.
Okay, and how much is that part of that project? What was their?
That's 80,000.
Gonna cut a check. Okay.
They're easy to print.
So if they did just that part because they're the most competent person to do it, then the other two pieces, who could we get to do those?
At a lower price point, we could have DigiCorp or SCS.
Okay, so
But
DigiCorp.
since no one likes SCS,
I
it
don't
would be
like
DigiCorp. We
Right,
now
so-
have it down to 2.
So PDS.
Technically, if I really wanted to go into pain and suffering, I could go to Robert Half and hire a person to do the
No.
domain migration.
It sounds like the domain migration though is the most complicated, most critical piece.
Yes.
So we want the most competent person to do
Well,
that.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say the exchange can get up there too,
Okay. So
because we're dealing with such a piece of legacy technology.
Forgive me for asking this because I know it's kind of a sore subject, but if you went to HBS for those two pieces, or one of those two pieces, are they capable?
They can't even get a video surveillance system.
Yeah.
okay, so the
This,
that
is,
in
a
the
lot more,
wheelhouse or
this
is
is
that-
a lot more complicated than a video
Exchange-
surveillance system.
exchange online migration.
Do they know it? Yes. Even to make things even worse, I have a brand new account manager because Greg Brosher just retired. So I have a brand new account manager over there who came from AT&T, brand new to the company on it. So one of the reasons there's just too many changes over there, and we have been on a wrong path with HBS for a period of time. Could I get them engaged? Push comes to shove to come in. If suddenly it's going to hell, it's not working. Could I bring PDS in here to give us help and assistance? Yes, I could.
Well, I think we're
If they
We're
had
trying
market
to-
availability.
we're trying to not get it to the point where it's all going to hell. We're trying to say like if references don't check out, or
Mhm.
DigiCorp can't really give us a good reason why they're pushing back so hard on this stuff, or it sounds kind of wishy-washy, then, is there a fallback to say, okay, well, DigiCorp, we don't want you for domain migration. Scaring them.
But we'll use you for the.
But we'll use you for the other pieces.
and the-
I guess what I do is I go back to PDS and say you're going to have to lower your price.
Could do that.
I like you, but what I'm seeing right now is way too expensive, way out to lunch. Here's the money that you have to stay in line with. Can you do this for this particular funds? Realizing I don't have that kind of money when I'm have to buying licenses at the same time. Or we do a which doesn't make that much sense. We do a list it, but we stay on the current version of software.
Do you think you could get PDS to refine their pricing downward if you gave them more of what you know under the covers, such as the list of applications of where you
Possible.
will assume the risk, where the city will assume the risk. We assume the risk that these applications are all good. If they don't, if
That's
they
a
aren't
good
good,
old-fashioned
it's
maybe.
not on you.
It's a good old fashioned maybe. I don't know.
How much is
Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't.
So I got these three pieces. I got 80K written next to domain migration. And then how much is the second and third one if we have who's the best person to do those? If it's DigiCorp, for example, do the second and the third one.
48 for DigiCorp for 365.
So let me ask
22.
Let me ask this again. So who's the best person to do the second one?
We're only down to two vendors.
Well, okay.
You meant the M365, right?
Yeah.
And the YubiKey thing. That was DigiCorp did it for. That's the part they did for Mecron,
Mecron.
right?
Right.
All right. So they are. So what did they put for that one? The second item.
And it may be a lot easier because the thing that was screwing up the whole YubiKey thing was
Yeah.
basically being a non-routable domain.
Yeah.
Once you're in a non-routable domain, I'm hoping that doing the YubiKey is like falling off of a log.
Okay. Not so much falling off a log that we'd have the original vendor do it.
But they were running under a false premise.
Okay. All right. So the second option, second project with YubiKeys, that's DigiCorp. What did they bid for that one?
I had labor 48. That must be, and the allocation was 33. I think there's optional stuff in there.
I guess what I'm asking if we have to go to Plan B, and because DigiCorp is not a great one for the domain migration, which is why they don't want to touch it.
Yeah, they got 22,000. How's that 48? 22,000, and then
That's for their exchange.
so I'm looking at the MFA. Did I type that in? I might have a boo-boo, which would not surprise me. So the allocation is 33, and then the RFP is 22, and then that should not be 48K. That
We have 22 under exchange for them. DigiCorp.
Exchange migration.
Am I looking at the right one?
That's the third one. On 2K. I'm still missing the second one.
Did you transpose the column?
I might have checking that. No, exchange is 16 to 22.
Okay, so 22 is the
So
high.
exchange is 22. 27,208 for the MFA.
7208. That's for the middle one.
And the domain migration for Lovett, that's the 48.
Okay, so
Sorry, I swapped the two.
So columns 1 and 2 are swapped. in
Correct.
this For DigiCorp, 48 and 27. Thank you.
so DigiCorp had how much for the domain migration?
48.
48.
48. So if we swap, we go from 48 to 80K. If we have to switch, if DigiCorp can only do the two, then that means we increase the cost of doing the first one, the domain migration, 48, which is what they bid, to 80K, which is what PDS bid.
Well, that's their fixed option. You could go with the time and material 60.
So still, it's going to cost us that 20,
Cost us a little bit more.
it's, 20, 30 grand more.
And that's assuming they come in at absolutely variable at the lowest point.
Okay, so that now, so that and that's out of, is that out of budget then? 80 plus 27 plus 22. 9 and 129. Right? 129. We have to pay PDS 80 for the first one, and we paid DigiCorp 27 for the second one, and we paid DigiCorp 22 for the third one. That's 129.
You got to pay planning costs for PDS 15.
15K. So the domain migration isn't 80, it's 95?
Yep.
Why did you
Sorry.
tell me it's 80?
Sorry.
Now you're finding the fun.
Okay, so you gotta add 15 to that. That's 4, 4, 1. So you're at 144.
So the total is 162 plus 19.
Well, if you do a hybrid approach between PDS and Digicorp.
I'm talking about the total revenue.
yeah,
The
right.
total available capital for us is 162 plus 19.
Okay.
So you're looking at 181 total.
And I see Plan B at the hybrid
So
approach.
if you and mind you still have licensing to take into consideration too, and the cost of the YubiKeys itself. So if you're looking at labor at 95, 27, and 22, so if you went with PDS for the domain migration, and you went with Digicorp for the other two. That's $144,000 in labor cost. What did I say? Total revenue 182,
Yeah.
181.
181. All right, and then you have out of your fixed costs down here, SQL licensing or server licensing, SQL licensing, YubiKeys, conversion tools may or may not be included in it. So
Just
oops. That's so it was at 39.5 plus 20.5 plus 24. I know we're that's 84.
3.
So now you're dealing with a labor cost of 144 plus 84. That's 222. That's close to where I said at the beginning of the counted. 222K, 228K, and you're at 181. So you're $47,000 over.
Yeah, so
There's the problem.
that Digicorp bid is so important, right? Because it makes breaks. I mean, they were 5K over. You already told us Digicorp's thing was 5K over. That's a big difference in 47K. All right, so if you can't confirm that Digicorp can do that first one, we're at a no go.
Then it's coming down to PDS. You're going to have to turn around and lower your price, or go with SCS, which holds a lot of reservations.
Right. So
And
Plan A, we got to exhaust Plan A, but if Plan A doesn't turn out, we don't have a lot of.
and we have one vendor that didn't send a quote
And you had one vendor that would not send it.
because they felt it was.
So we already said SCS and Robert Half. No.
Yeah, I know. I'm just, there are vendors. Having been a vendor, there are vendors who try to meet the costs and hope that they can get some overrun on it. So they win the deal and we're 10, 20% over. They got it. And then there's vendors who try to do the proper scoping and proper planning and proper proposal, and will commit to that or
And then
close to that.
and that sounds like you're talking about Digicorp and PDS.
Yeah.
And then you have another vendor who's saying, "You're whacked. This thing's going to take way more than you're thinking," which sort of says the PDS people probably should pay heed to them because they're doing the extra and they're coming out high, but no kidding.
Well, they may be erring on the high side
And caution.
on caution, right? So their prices are inflated because there's information that they don't fully understand or know.
Yes.
And that's why I was saying, can you go back
All right.
to
Sarah?
one or more of these vendors and say, we just want your best and final. And I know you're running out of time, but we want your best and final price. And here's some information we can share, some assumptions that maybe we didn't put in the RFP. These are things that we will assume responsibility for. City of Franklin will assume responsibility for rebuilding the user tables in these applications. if these applications do not work, it's not your problem. Assuming it's a application limitation, right?
I mean, I did list what their deliverables were and what IT's. That was very clear on the assumption. What they don't know is, all right, what applications are AD integrated that are not going to give you any problems, which ones are local, and that
I think,
and then giving them a list of, all right, here's the accounts and such that are going to get converted.
that might not be a bad offer, just to do it and go back to give them that, say, we need your best and final, here's some additional information that we hope, that
Sharpen
will
your
help
pencil.
sharpen the pencil on the domain migration costs.
You could. I would even go further. I would just say, we like what you gave us. The problem is it's way more. It's more than what we can afford. We don't have the money for it.
Yeah, you can tell.
We wonder, and you could say that. And
You can
so,
say that.
You can say that to
Yeah.
PDS,
And-
but then you still go back to DigiCorp and, to
He's gotta
give
do
them
things fairly, right?
Yeah, you have to do it fairly. So you go back and
Yeah.
say, hey, best and final offer, just to let you know, you're on
But
the short list.
offering them other information to make it more certain, so they can lower the price, because they can say, "Wow, we weren't sure about that, so we have
Correct.
a contingency in there."
Correct.
Well,
Or
that
at least
contingency
lower
isn't
their
needed.
price, the ranges.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
instead of saying 69 through 84, they're like, yeah, we're gonna say 72 to 76. You know what I mean, right? Like they'll cut back the range and make it a little.
Well, in order for PDS to do this, it's like they're going to have to
yeah.
cut back significantly off of it, because we're talking about 228,000.
Yeah, just provide
Versus
them
100. I
the
mean, we're
feedback.
$47,000 off.
Provide them the feedback, be honest, and tell them here's some additional information and what other questions can I maybe clarify very quickly for you that maybe
Yeah.
drove your costs up, your assumptions up.
The other question you could clarify is that planning cost.
Yeah.
What's in that? Is that project management? So how much of a project manager is going to be assigned to this? Is that a full-time project manager? Half-time project manager? And you could ask DigiCorp the same thing. Are you going to assign a project manager? Because, they could be assuming that you're going to project manage it, or they're going to give you an account manager who's going to do the
You
project.
certainly want to know what it is, right?
You do.
Are you expected to project manage it in the DigiCorp scenario? You certainly want to know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be a surprise.
Yeah, or it's it's an hour a week from some. You can ask lots of questions and get the references from DigiCorp.
So plan A is try to address the red flag that DigiCorp has. Plan B is try to get the PDS to come down in price. If neither of those work,
Give them a little bit more information.
Yeah.
Give them a little bit more information and see, one, does that give them, one, the comfort level
Well,
to it, and then two, will it impact price?
the big concern with SCS was that just they didn't, over the phone, they just gave you verbal reference, right? They didn't say, oh yeah, we've done that. They didn't give
SCS
you actual.
is a security company.
The biggest thing is it's a security company, and the question is can they deploy versus being architecture and dealing with security issues.
I
Can
was
you
gonna say-
actually do
Why don't
this?
we ask them
I
for
was,
references?
I was going to say Plan
DigiCorp.
C would be get the references from SCS,
Mhm.
then proving that they can do it.
There you go.
That if you had to pick a pecking order, like okay, option one's off the table, we can't do DigiCorp. Option two's off the table, we can't do PDS. All right, SCS, you're our last hope.
well,
Give us more references.
SCS came in on
Yeah,
a
they know
budget,
they gave good. Yeah,
right? Okay, so if the red flag with SCS is we can't verify that you've actually done a domain migration and you've done this and you've done this, and let's just ask for references.
yeah. Just ask for references, and
I
maybe
mean,
that
one of the
solves all our
references they
problems.
gave me wasn't government, it was a petroleum company.
Just remind them that hey, we really want to see government examples.
Well-
Please provide us government examples, and please be honest about this.
So that's their red flag. So let's address the red flag. Like
And
we
if
have with DigiCorp.
you're not lying, and you say we're going to a short list, we're cutting it down from 4 to 3. It's already a short list. Yeah.
It's 2.5, really. 1.5.
Like I said, this was not easy to put together or evaluate.
No, but maybe go back to all three of them and give them each of them their specific feedback and say you need the best and final, and then we have a. Can we just do it over a quick email, or can we do a virtual meeting? Do we have to come in person?
The record law or open meetings law by the state says we have to be here in person for it. So I would need to have some form of a meeting.
Gotta be
We don't have to have a
posted.
PowerPoint presentation for it. I do have to have an agenda pushed out for it, but we would have to make an emergency meeting to discuss this. I would also say that the meeting that we're having on the 28th, we're not going to do it because that's Memorial Day weekend, and who the heck is going to be here at that time? Plus, I know people already in the IT department are going to try to be taking off during that. So I never tried to
That's
schedule
May
meetings.
28th, though. I'm thinking we're going to have to meet again in 2 weeks.
I know. So I'm just certain the May meeting will be the emergency meeting.
No, we're trying to help you
Saying
get ready
No,
in
just
2 weeks.
this. Just this. That's all we're talking about.
So to have an emergency meeting within the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. I need to have an emergency meeting
Which is
before
still
the
April.
6th.
May 6th.
May 6th. Yes.
Yeah, so why are you saying May 28th is the emergency
It
meeting?
isn't.
No,
What I'm saying is I'm canceling
Yes.
May 28th.
Yeah.
Well, what,
And the May meeting will be the emergency meeting.
I'll be out.
You'll be out when?
I'm in San Francisco next week for the big RSA security conference.
Okay.
Then I'm in Minneapolis the following week.
Right.
So, I mean, you could Zoom me in
Yeah.
or Teams me.
Can't do that.
Well, we
Or if you put my physical laptop.
But you could give me. It hasn't been done before, so I'm not going to ask permission. I'm just going to do it. You could just turn around. I can give you my synopsis before the meeting
and please provide it
for it, and based upon that, you can make your motion to recommend
Okay.
an email.
We'll read it in the record.
So I mean, if DigiCorp turns around, option A,
I can do
if
that.
we check the vetting of the customers, government customers, then the big red flag is why do you want to do Love It? Did you have horror stories? What's your Exchange 2010 knowledge? And who is the project manager? If they can answer that satisfactory for it, I will type something up of what the responses were to that. You can just turn around and say, yeah, I'll do the motion to recommend DigiCorp. If we get bad information from any of those, then I'm going to have to go to PDS and also SCS and deal with their red flags and try to get PDS to come down in price for it, and based upon what they're turning around and doing. It may be a situation where I'm going to have to ask everyone to turn around and requote, just like we did with the video surveillance project. After discussion, it's like we need you to requote, and the requote has to be done by this time period. Remember all the technical errors that the people had on their stuff. They had to do that. They ain't going to like it. Then we have that emergency meeting to turn around and discuss the. If it does, the red flags are still there with DigiCorp, I think then it may come into.
All right,
sorry,
so-
it's not cut and dry. but
Yeah.
I think
It never is.
I would say as soon as you have information, get it posted up on, you can start looking at it.
Yeah.
That we can do without a meeting.
Any further discussion on item number
The only
4?
biggest problem that I'm going to see with it is I was going to use the time period between now and the 6th to get through legal stuff with Jesse. So it's like, hopefully that.
You can do that simultaneously. Yeah, because you don't know which
I have a
contract.
contract.
I don't know which contract it is.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Well,
Can we
So
just
depending
keep it
upon how
generic?
quickly I get this information, then I can at least send stuff out to do the emergency meeting.
I was gonna say, do you want to? Can we like preemptively like vote on like if you find the answer satisfactory that we would choose this one? If we find the answer satisfactory, this or
it's not needed. We have other, we have other people that'll show up and
Hopefully.
vote, right?
hopefully.
Maybe. We got 4 right now in any quorum. If he's not going to be here, we got a problem.
So Scott is not.
I think my term ended this time. Actually,
So-
you have to re-
You get a renewal.
It's
Yeah.
automatic.
Yeah,
Oh,
sort of
you're gonna bill
like a
me
Mad
automatically?
Magazine subscription.
That's right. They don't tell you
Keeps
till later.
renewing.
You've been renewed. That's what they did to me.
I got auto renewed. I figured I was a lifer, so.
Yeah.
Auto renewal.
They don't tell me anymore, hoping that I'll never
That's
figure it
right.
out and then say, oh, might be a good time, like Dale. Might be a good time to retire
So
from this.
So we should do a motion. Do a motion.
We have enough to motion on. I don't feel comfortable motioning on all of moving.
Well, we have to
parts
motion on the
Love it or
list
leave it.
love it. There was 2 things he wanted us out of us. One is the love it or list it, and the other one was which vendor.
Okay.
And so we can do the first motion because we all
Fine.
seems pretty confident with that one, right? So,
Stated as so.
so I make a motion that we continue with the full domain migration as approved in the last meeting
And discussed herein.
and
Right.
discussed herein if
Be careful of the word
we did approve it last time.
well, we didn't make a motion to approve. You can't approve something that you didn't make a motion.
All right, we discussed it. Discussed it both times.
So I'm going to make my motion again, right? I'm not going to get this right. Make a motion that we recommend the full domain migration period
As the preferred solution.
as the first.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Who was the first? Obviously, you were the first.
Max is the second.
Who was second?
Max.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Not going to do the second motion until we get more information. Thank you for your time on that.
Yeah.
It was a good
Thank you for
discussion.
your work on that.
It was a very good
Sorry for
discussion.
giving you more. But
Yeah.
I'm getting used to it. Where are we?
Technical issues review, director's report.
Fairly easy. The technology issues. Johnson Controls subcontractors have completed the installation of the doored badge readers. You can probably see it, and the automatic locks on selected interior and all exterior doors at the city. The devices are not operational, as the software has to be fully configured and operational roles have to be established. Most likely, IT will be responsible for the badge administration, and this will be included in the employee onboarding and matriculation processes. All employees will have yet to be assigned security badges that will open up doors specific to the departments. The PD will need access to the system for emergency management purposes. Note, this will be yet another thing on top of all this that we're going to have to move.
Seems like a thing that a Lisa type person.
She would kill me, but yes.
I mean,
It'll
When
come
I-
down
when I
to
was
they're going to
working, we
need
had
to
a
have a
Lisa type
digest
person.
of here's all the employees in all of the departments, and these are the roles that need to be assigned to, and for this role you need to open up these specific.
right.
So it's like someone
Sounds like
has
an
to
HR.
feed the vendor
There's a
information.
one-time bolus of work, but then it's like, all right, this person's just like Jim.
Right. Once you set it up, it's fine, but yet it's just another distraction that's going to unfortunately be out there at the timing of all this. And then the director's notes and operations. Manual deployment of the Lenovo laptops and desktops is around 80% complete, and that's a true 80%. DPW, sewer, water, finance, treasury, and PD dispatch are still scheduled for the upgrades. Overall, the new deployments have encountered very few issues, with no showstoppers where additional applications are not compatible with Windows 11. The only outstanding issue is Exchange prompting users for passwords when specifically mounted shared mailboxes are being used. On that, doing extremely well. On Tuesday, 4/15, BSNA pulled out a security patch / hotfix that prevented the city from being able to perform cash receipting. This impacted all BSNA customers, and their support desk was absolutely hammered to the point of being non-responsive. The problem was fully corrected by end of business day, where all modules needed to be installed on a computer, even if it didn't need them. Each modules had to be upgraded to the latest hotfix. The core issue was the hotfix required a database schema update, which was automatically applied when one of the standard modules was installed. Which exact module created the schema update is unknown, but following the process of upgrading all the modules that were required, actually did the schema update and allowed the application to function. Yeah, you're gritting your teeth on that one.
Always something.
Lovely. All right.
I can't complain too much. I mean, BSNA really, overall, out of most of the vendors, this was their first major oops in 10 years. so I can't complain that bad. But when you're number 90 in the call queue, you got a problem.
Especially when you get the recorded message. If you're suffering a problem from cash receipts,
It's pretty embarrassing when you
After an
cannot accept and record cash.
yes, that's one of your. Okay.
And it was the day for court too.
Agenda items. I guess the next meeting will be in June.
If that's what you're saying.
Yeah, we're not going to do that meeting, and
Next regularly scheduled meeting,
Correct.
I should say, versus special meeting, and we'll have hear about special meeting soon. Motion for adjournment.
get to the shoot.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Second.
You do a second?
Right.
All those in favor?
I didn't know. Oh, okay.
I guess you and I are the ones who can make decisions in this.
All right.
7:58.
I'm not supposed to.
So much for going.
Okay, I didn't know that.
That's only for